AITA for refusing to help my brother after he sabotaged my job interview. I, 29M, work in a pretty competitive field, corporate finance. It's not glamorous, but it's stable, and I've worked really hard to move up the ladder. I don't come from money. My family struggled when we were growing up. My dad left when I was 13, and my mom worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. I've always had a hustle. Scholarships, part-time jobs, summer internships, you name it. My younger brother, Kyle, 25M, is kind of the opposite. He's always been more charismatic, charming, and able to talk his way out of anything. He's smart, don't get me wrong, but he just never had the same drive. He bounced around from one interest to the next, photography, music production, then real estate, then trying to be a YouTuber. He's never held a job longer than 8 months, and my mom has financially bailed him out more times than I can count. Despite all that, I've always tried to be there for him. I've loaned him money, helped him fix his resume, even connected him with people in my network, but always felt one-sided. When I got promoted to a management role last year, Kyle barely acknowledged it. When I bought my first condo, he made snide comments about how I sold out and was just a corporate drone. Still, I let it slide. He's my brother. Fast forward to about 2 months ago. A major financial firm, a big step up from where I work now, posted a director-level opening. I've been eyeing this kind of role for years. I went through multiple rounds of interviews, and finally, I made it to the final 2 candidates. It came down to me and some guy from Boston. The last stage was a high-stakes presentation in front of the senior board. They gave me a week to prepare. That week, Kyle showed up at my place unannounced, saying he needed a place to crash because his roommate kicked him out. I hesitated but said yes. I set clear boundaries. I'd be working late, needed peace and quiet, and this presentation was a really big deal. He promised he'd be invisible. He was not invisible. He was constantly blasting music, leaving dishes everywhere, using my laptop without asking, and bringing people over late at night. One night, I came home to find a girl I'd never met asleep on my couch. I sat him down and told him he had to get it together. Just give me 5 more days of quiet. He agreed. The night before my presentation, I stayed up prepping until around 1 a.m. I left my laptop on my desk, went to bed, and woke up to find it missing. I freaked out. After tearing my place apart, I found it in the kitchen, dead, and sticky with what I think was orange juice. Kyle wasn't home. I charged it up, and half my files were gone. Not only the presentation, but a bunch of Word documents I had stored locally. Yes, I know, back up your files, I do now. I called Kyle, furious. He answered like nothing was wrong, and casually said, needed to borrow it for a quick Zoom call. When I asked why it was soaked in juice, he laughed and said, accidents happen, bro, chill. I didn't have time to argue. I spent the next 6 hours trying to recover what I could, but the final version of the presentation was gone. I cobbled together an earlier draft and showed up to the meeting on 3 hours of sleep, completely frazzled. I didn't get the job. Afterwards, the recruiter told me, off the record, that while I had a strong background, my presentation seemed rushed and disorganized, and that tipped the scale toward the other candidate. I was devastated. I didn't talk to Kyle for a few days. When I finally did, I told him to pack his stuff and leave. He acted like I was overreacting and said, it's just a job, man. You'll get another one. You're always so uptight. I told him I was done helping him. I blocked his number and didn't speak to him for a month. Then about a week ago, my mom called me in tears. Kyle had been evicted again and needed a place to stay. I told her I was sorry, but he wasn't coming back here. She said he was in a really dark place and that I needed to be the bigger person. I said I'd pay for a week at a motel, but that's it. She got upset and said I was punishing him for a mistake. Now, Kyle is telling people in our family that I'm a cold-hearted jerk who abandoned him when he needed me most. Some of our cousins are texting me, saying I'm being petty and need to let it go. One even said, he's your brother. Family is forever. But I don't think that gives someone a free pass to keep wrecking your life. So, AITA for refusing to help him now? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot and motivates me to create even more amazing content just for you. Make sure to turn on notifications so you'll never miss out on a new video. I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for your support. It truly helps the channel grow. AITA for refusing to go on a family vacation after what my brother did at my birthday dinner. I, 27F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older brother Jason, 30M. Growing up, he was the golden child in my parents' eyes. He was athletic, charming, and the type of person who always seemed to be able to get away with things. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more academic, and generally tried to keep the peace. My parents would always dismiss my concerns as overreactions or tell me I needed to let it go when Jason did something that upset me. I learned early on that there was no point in trying to stand up for myself because it usually ended with me being called dramatic. Jason and I both live in the same city now, but we don't see each other often. I've kept things cordial over the years, but distant. My therapist calls it low contact, which feels about right. I don't go out of my way to interact with him, but I'm polite at family functions and avoid confrontation. I've spent years trying to heal from the emotional mess of growing up in a household where I always felt unseen and unheard. Last month, I turned 27. It felt like a milestone for me because I've made a lot of personal progress, got a promotion at work, paid off a chunk of my student loans, and started a serious relationship with someone who actually treats me with kindness and respect. My boyfriend, Evan, 29M, planned a small birthday dinner for me at one of my favorite restaurants. He invited a few close friends, and, with my hesitant approval, my parents and Jason too. I figured one dinner couldn't hurt and wanted to show Evan I was trying to keep family involved in my life. The dinner started off fine. We had a private room at the restaurant, and everyone seemed in good spirits. Evan gave a short toast about how proud he was of me and how much he admired the way I've handled things over the past year. It was heartfelt and kind, and it honestly made me tear up. Then, my friend Maya shared a funny story about our college days, and we were all laughing. That's when Jason decided it was his turn to speak. He stood up, clinking his glass dramatically like we were at a wedding or something, and said something like, "I just want to say something real quick because I've known my name the longest. It's been great watching her finally come out of her shell. She was always kind of a weird kid, super intense and emotional, but she's chilled out a lot lately, and it's been nice seeing her be a bit more normal." The room went silent. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own birthday dinner, a night that was supposed to be about celebrating me, and Jason somehow managed to make it about how I've finally become tolerable in his eyes. I could feel my face burning. Maya looked mortified, Evan looked furious, and my mom gave that awkward laugh she does when Jason says something inappropriate, but she doesn't want to call him out. I try to brush it off, but it ruined the entire vibe of the night. For the rest of dinner, I barely spoke. Evan kept squeezing my hand under the table, but I was just emotionally checked out. When the check came, Jason made a show of paying for everyone's drinks as a birthday treat, like that made up for everything. The next day, I texted my parents and told them how upset I was. My mom responded with, "You didn't mean it like that. You know how your brother jokes." My dad didn't reply at all. Evan was the only one who validated how crappy it was, and he even offered to talk to Jason for me, but I told him it wasn't worth it. Fast forward a week later. My parents started planning a family vacation for early summer, a beach house rental about 5 hours away. They wanted everyone to come, me, Jason, Evan, my sister-in-law, and even my aunt and uncle. When I said I wasn't sure if I wanted to go, my mom got really pushy. She told me it was important for the family and that it would mean a lot if we could all be together for once. I told her I was still upset about the birthday dinner and didn't feel like spending a week in the same house as Jason. That opened the floodgates. My mom told me I was being petty and holding a grudge over a harmless joke. My dad finally chimed in to say that family is more important than hurt feelings, and I needed to be mature and get over it. Jason, of course, texted me something like, "Didn't realize you were still so sensitive, LOL. Didn't mean anything by it." I snapped. I told them I wasn't going and that I was tired of always being the one expected to swallow my feelings for the sake of family harmony. I said I was done pretending like Jason's behavior was normal or acceptable, and if they wanted to continue enabling him, that was their choice, but I wouldn't be part of it anymore. Now, everyone is furious with me. My mom says I'm breaking the family apart, And my aunt texted me a long message about how life is short and I shouldn't hold on to negativity. Evan supports my decision, and Maya says she's proud of me for standing up for myself, but I can't help feeling guilty. I know my parents are disappointed, and part of me wonders if I'm being selfish or overreacting. It's just, I've spent so much of my life being told to let things go and not make a scene, and for once I wanted to put up a boundary and stick to it. But now I feel like the bad guy, even though I didn't start any of this. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to go on a family vacation after what my brother did at my birthday dinner. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me, even though she's broke and has nowhere else to go. I, 32M, live alone in a 2-bedroom condo I bought 3 years ago. I work in IT and make decent money, and I live a pretty quiet life. I like my space, my routines, and honestly, I like being alone most of the time. My job is demanding, and I'm pretty introverted, so home is where I recharge. I've got one sibling, my younger sister Mia, 28F. We weren't super close growing up. She was always the rebellious, loud, free-spirited one while I was the nerdy, quiet kid. Our parents divorced when we were teenagers, and we dealt with it very differently. I buried myself in school and eventually work. She didn't. She dropped out of college after a year, moved around a lot, tried different jobs and gigs, photography, bartending, some influencer stuff. She's never had a steady income or long-term plan, and she always seems to have a new crisis every few months. I've helped her out here and there, money for rent, bills, groceries. Never huge amounts, but over the years, it adds up. I never expected anything back, but I always hoped she'd get it together. 3 months ago, she called me crying. She'd been living with a guy she met last year, and they broke up. He told her to move out, and she had nowhere to go. She'd been couch surfing with friends, but that wasn't working out. She asked if she could move in with me just for a little while until she got back on her feet. I paused before answering. Every time Mia says just for a little while, it turns into months. And every time she hits a wall, someone else has to catch her. I didn't want to be that person anymore. I told her no. She didn't take it well. She asked if I was serious. I said I was. I explained that I like living alone, I need the space for my mental health, and I didn't feel comfortable having her move in with no clear timeline or plan. She accused me of being selfish, said I had so much, and she had nothing, and how could I turn my back on my own sister? She said if the roles were reversed, she wouldn't hesitate to help me. I doubt that, honestly. She ended the call by saying she'd remember this forever. My parents found out and are split. My mom thinks I was cold and should have helped her just for a little bit because that's what family does. My dad, on the other hand, told me he gets it and that Mia has always had a way of digging her own holes and expecting others to pull her out. Now here's where it gets more complicated. A few weeks ago, I heard from a mutual friend that Mia is staying with someone she barely knows, a friend of a friend. Apparently, the situation is sketchy. She's sleeping on a futon in a basement. The guy's been making weird comments, and it's clearly not safe. When I heard that, I felt horrible, like gut punch horrible. Even if I'm mad at her, I don't want her in danger. I called her and offered to pay for a short-term Airbnb or motel for a couple of weeks while she figured something out. She refused, said if I was willing to pay that much, I might as well just let her stay with me. I told her again that wasn't an option, but the money was a gesture to help her get safe. She hung up on me. Since then, my mom's been calling constantly, telling me Mia is going through the worst time of her life, and that I'm abandoning her. She says I live in a palace, I don't, and it would be nothing for me to share it. My dad says Mia needs to learn to stand on her own, but even he suggested maybe I should have let her crash for a few weeks just to avoid the drama. I don't know. I feel like if I'd said yes, it would have turned into a long-term thing with no exit plan. I would have resented her, and we probably would have ended up fighting all the time. But now I'm haunted by this image of her sleeping in a creepy basement, and I wonder if I was just being too rigid. My girlfriend, we don't live together yet, thinks I did the right thing. She knows how stressed I get even having people visit for a weekend, and she's seen the way Mia manipulates situations to make herself seem helpless. She said helping her with the Airbnb was generous, and that Mia refusing it just proves she didn't want a solution. She wanted control. Still, I can't shake the guilt. Mia hasn't spoken to me since I offered the Airbnb. My mom is furious. And even though I keep telling myself I had every right to say no, it's hard not to feel like the villain when everyone around me seems to think I am. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me, even though she's broke and has nowhere else to go. AITA for telling my sister she can't move in with me after burning a major bridge with our parents. I, 32M, own a small house in a quiet suburb just outside a medium-sized city. It's not fancy, but it's mine, paid off after years of frugal living and a lot of overtime. I've been living here solo for about 5 years, ever since my longtime girlfriend and I split. I like the peace. I work as a technician for a local utility company, so my job is stable but not wildly lucrative. My younger sister, Rachel, 26F, has always been more of the artistic free spirit. She's bounced between jobs, cities, relationships, you name it. Nothing wrong with that in theory, but she also has a long history of what I'd call impulsive decisions that blow up in her face, followed by frantic calls to our parents or me to help clean it up. Our parents live about 40 minutes away and have always been generous to both of us, but Rachel has pushed them past the limit lately. About 6 months ago, she got into a huge blowout with them after they refused to co-sign another lease for her in a city 3 states away. She wanted to move there with a guy she had been dating for about 6 weeks and pursue acting, despite already leaving behind 2 unfinished degrees and thousands in student loans. When they said no, she exploded. She accused them of ruining her life, called them controlling, and basically told them she didn't want anything to do with them if they wouldn't support her choices. She moved out of the apartment they were helping pay for and couch surf with friends. Our parents, heartbroken, decided to stop financially supporting her entirely. For the record, this wasn't a sudden cutoff. They've been helping her since she was 18. She was 26 when this happened. Fast forward to 3 weeks ago, I get a text from Rachel. Hey, can we talk? Need a place to crash for a bit. I was hesitant, but agreed to a phone call. She told me she had broken up with the guy she moved for. Her friends were tired of hosting her, and she had no money and nowhere to go. I asked about her job. She said she had quit 2 weeks prior because it was toxic. I asked what her plan was. She said she'd stay with me for a few months, maybe 6, get a local job, and eventually get her own place. I told her I needed a day to think. I talked it over with my parents, who were supportive of whatever I decided. Ultimately, I told Rachel no. I told her I was sorry, but I'd worked hard for the quiet and stability I have now, and I didn't feel comfortable bringing someone into my home who had a habit of self-sabotaging and expecting others to catch her. She lost it. She called me selfish, judgmental, and accused me of abandoning family when they need help. She said I was being just like mom and dad, who apparently don't care if she ends up on the street. I told her I did care, but caring didn't mean I had to sacrifice my peace for her lack of planning. I suggested a local women's shelter and job resource center that a coworker's daughter had used when she was in a tough spot. She hung up on me. Since then, she's been posting vague rants on social media about how her family has turned their backs and how she's starting over with no one in her corner. A few of her friends, some I've never even met, have messaged me things like, "Real nice letting your little sister fend for herself on the streets." Here's the thing. I know I could have let her stay. It wouldn't have ruined me financially. I have the space, but I also know Rachel. She doesn't do well with boundaries. She would leave dishes everywhere, come in at weird hours, maybe not get a job for weeks. And saying 6 months could easily become a year or more. I've gone through this cycle with her before. She cries for help, you help her, and she stays just long enough to mess up the setup and leave you picking up the pieces. Our parents agree with me, but a few extended family members are now weighing in, saying I'm being cold and harsh. They aren't offering to take her in, though. So yeah, AITA for not letting my sister move in with me, even though she's struggling. AITA for refusing to let my brother move in after he went no contact for 5 years. So I, 32F, am currently being called selfish, petty, and vengeful by several family members, and I'm starting to second-guess myself. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. My brother, 30M, whom I'll call Derek, and our younger sister, 28F, whom I'll call Mia, all grew up in the same house with our mom. Our dad left when I was 12, and honestly, that's when everything went sideways for us. My mom was not emotionally equipped to raise 3 kids on her own and had a lot of undiagnosed mental health issues. I basically became a third parent overnight. I was the one who made sure homework was done, who packed lunches, signed field trip forms, cleaned up after dinner, and handled the tantrums. Derek and Mia had different reactions to our mom's emotional instability. Mia became very attached to me, while Derek became angry, withdrawn, and eventually hostile. By the time I was 18 and moved out, Derek was 16 and already in full rebellion mode. He was skipping school, stealing small things from stores, lying constantly, and always making me out to be the bad guy for trying to set any boundaries. Even when I moved out and had no control over him anymore, he would talk badly about me to the rest of the family, say I was trying to act like everyone's mom, and that I ruined his childhood with my nagging. I brushed it off because he was a teenager and clearly hurting. But it didn't stop. I tried to stay in touch, invite him to events, offer help when he was struggling. When he got kicked out of school at 17, I offered to let him stay with me for a while. He lasted 2 weeks before taking my debit card and draining $400 from my account to buy video games and weed. I kicked him out and didn't press charges, mostly because of my mom begging me not to. That was the first big blow. After that, contact was minimal. He refused to apologize and said I should have known better than to trust him. The entitlement blew my mind. I told him that until he took accountability, I didn't want him in my life. And he said, and I quote, "That's fine. I don't need a fake sister anyway." That was 5 years ago. In those 5 years, he has not contacted me once. No texts on birthdays, no replies to messages, nothing. Total ghost. I got engaged, married, and had my daughter last year. Derek was invited to none of it. Not out of spite, but because he was a stranger at that point. 2 weeks ago, Mia called me in a panic. Apparently, Derek got evicted from his apartment. He was living with some friends, didn't pay rent, and things got nasty. He's now couch surfing and had the nerve to ask Mia if he could stay with her and her fiancé. They live in a 1-bedroom, so it wasn't an option. So Mia calls me and says, "I know it's a big ask, but can Derek stay with you and Dan, my husband, for a few months? Just until he gets back on his feet?" I immediately said no. Not only is our daughter just 10 months old, but we also both work full-time and already juggle childcare, chores, and our own lives. Bringing Derek, who hasn't spoken to me in 5 years, never apologized for stealing from me, and never acknowledged my daughter or marriage, into that chaos is a huge no. I said, "Tell him to try a shelter or a friend." "I'm not an option." Mia begged. She said he's changed, that he's been going to therapy, convenient timing, that he just needs help. I said therapy's great, but he can stay with his therapist then. Now suddenly, I'm the villain. My mom called and said that, as the oldest, it's my responsibility to hold the family together. She said I'm being cold and heartless, and that family doesn't abandon family. I told her that he abandoned me years ago, and she never held him accountable. So why should I? Even my dad, who barely speaks to any of us, texted me to say I should at least give him a month or 2. Dan is totally backing me. He said Derek is a walking tornado and we don't owe him anything. But Mia won't stop texting me about how hard things have been for him, how he finally wants to reconnect, and that this is a chance for me to be the bigger person. I told her being the bigger person doesn't mean lighting your own house on fire to keep someone else warm. She hasn't responded since. So, AITA for refusing to let my estranged brother move in even though he's homeless? AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister after calling her out for lying about her childhood? I, 31F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who's recently taken to sharing a lot of her life journey online. She has a fairly decent following on social media. Nothing crazy, but enough to feel like a micro-influencer. Over the past year, she's pivoted her content from fashion and lifestyle to more personal stuff, talking about mental health, healing, and her upbringing. At first, I thought it was brave of her to open up, and I even supported her by sharing her posts. That changed about 2 months ago when she started posting these long captions about our abusive childhood. She described growing up in a household where she was constantly invalidated, never heard, and where our parents were strict to the point of emotional neglect. She said she had no one to rely on but herself, and even suggested she had to raise herself because the adults in her life were too busy managing their own dysfunction. She didn't name anyone directly, but anyone who knows us knows exactly who she's talking about. Our parents are not perfect. No one's are, but they're good people. We were never rich, but we always had food, a clean home, school supplies, birthday gifts, and family trips every summer. They were involved in our lives, showed up to parent-teacher meetings, and never once hit us or screamed in our faces. They were strict in some areas, like curfews and grades, but they also let us have sleepovers, signed us up for whatever clubs we wanted, and always made an effort to talk things through if we were upset. I felt uncomfortable with the way she was painting our family, but I didn't say anything at first. I figured maybe she was working through something or saw things differently than I did. But things escalated when she posted a TikTok that went semi-viral, where she essentially acted out a toxic mother-daughter conversation and captioned it POV, when your mom only loves you if you're perfect. Again, not naming names, but our mom has seen it. She called me crying because she couldn't believe Emily thought she was a monster. I called Emily the next day. I tried to be gentle. I told her I'd been seeing her posts and that I was concerned about the way she was representing our family. I said, I don't know what you're going through, but you're telling a story that doesn't align with the reality I lived. I don't think it's fair to make mom and dad into villains. She got defensive immediately. She told me I didn't understand her experience, that just because we grew up in the same house didn't mean we experienced it the same way. I agreed with that to an extent, but I also said there's a difference between having a different emotional experience and rewriting history. You're acting like you were neglected or mistreated, and that's just not true. You were loved. You were loved. That's when she snapped. She accused me of gaslighting her and said I was part of the problem. She told me that I'd always been the golden child and that I had no right to tell her how to feel. I told her she had every right to feel how she felt, but feelings aren't facts. She can feel unheard, but that doesn't mean our parents were abusive. She hung up on me. Since then, things have gone completely off the rails. She posted a video talking about how people in her life are trying to silence her truth and how survivors often face the most resistance from their own families. Again, not naming me, but the timing and context made it pretty obvious. I've had a few mutual friends reach out to me, saying they're sorry I'm going through this. One even said, I didn't know your family was that bad, and I had to explain that they weren't. Our parents are heartbroken. They keep asking what they did wrong, and I honestly don't have an answer. I don't think they did anything especially wrong. Were they perfect? No, but they were involved and present and never cruel. A few weeks ago, my cousin got engaged and invited both of us to her engagement party. It was the first time I saw Emily in person since the phone call. She acted like nothing was wrong, came up to me, smiled, and said, hey. I looked her dead in the eye and said, I'm not doing this. She looked confused, and I said, you don't get to destroy our family's reputation online and then play nice in person. If you want to talk, let's talk. But I'm not going to pretend this is okay. She walked off, clearly embarrassed. Later, she messaged me a long paragraph about how hurt she was that I attacked her in public and humiliated her in front of our family. She said I should have just let it go and that I owe her an apology. I told her no, I'm not going to apologize for holding her accountable. I said if she wants to talk privately and actually be honest, I'm open to that, but I won't keep playing the role of her silent co-star while she spins her victim narrative for likes. Now my aunt is saying I should have just let it go for the sake of the event, and my mom is begging me to apologize just to keep the peace. But I don't want to. I feel like everyone is enabling her because they're afraid of how she'll portray them if they don't. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister after confronting her about how she's misrepresenting our family. AITA for locking my brother out of the house after he kept borrowing my things without asking. 24F, live at home with my parents while finishing grad school. It's not ideal, but I'm saving a ton of money by staying here instead of renting near campus. My younger brother, 20M, who dropped out of college after one semester, also lives at home. He works part-time at a vape shop and does online trading or crypto or something. I honestly don't understand what he does most of the time, but it doesn't seem to bring in much money. For context, I'm a pretty private person. I value my space and my things. I work really hard, and when I buy something, it's because I earned it. My brother, on the other hand, treats anything in the house like it's community property. For the last 6 months or so, he's been borrowing, his word, my stuff without asking. It started small: socks, chargers, a hoodie. Then it escalated. He used my laptop once and closed all my tabs while I had unsaved work. He's eaten food I specifically bought for myself. And the last straw was when I found out he used my credit card that I keep in my locked drawer. He didn't steal it, technically. He just got the spare key from our parents' key cabinet. When I confronted him, he brushed it off and said he'd pay me back, which he hasn't. I told our parents about the credit card thing and expected them to back me up. Instead, they acted like I was overreacting. My mom said, "He's your brother, not a thief," and my dad told me to just keep my drawer locked better. I pointed out that he used the spare key they keep in plain sight, and they still just shrugged. So I took matters into my own hands. My parents both work full-time, and I'm usually the last one to leave the house and the first one home. I changed the doorknob to my room to 1 with a keypad lock. I didn't tell anyone the code. I also started keeping anything valuable in my room: laptop, headphones, even snacks. My brother noticed and got pissed, saying I was being paranoid and controlling. I ignored him. Last week, my brother asked if he could borrow my noise-canceling headphones for a Zoom meeting. I said no, because the last time I lent him something, it came back scratched. He got huffy but dropped it. The next day, I went to class, and when I got back, the door to my room had scratches around the lock. He had clearly tried to force it open. Nothing was missing, thankfully, but I was done. The next day, he called me while I was on campus and asked me to leave the back door unlocked because he forgot his key. I said no and told him he needed to start carrying his key like a responsible adult. He laughed and said, "Okay, whatever," and hung up. So I locked everything and went about my day. I came home around 6 p.m. and found him sitting on the porch, furious. Apparently, he had no luck getting a ride to the vape shop, where a mom works nearby, so he just sat outside in the cold for an hour and a half. He said I was cruel and that no sister should lock her brother out of the house like a stray dog. I said maybe if he stopped acting like one, I wouldn't have to. My parents came home an hour later, and he launched into a dramatic retelling of how I abandoned him outside like garbage. My mom got emotional and told me that families are supposed to trust and support each other. I said I would trust him if he'd stop invading my space and stealing my stuff. My dad told me I was acting vindictive and punishing him for something that could have been solved with a conversation. I said we've had conversations. Dozens. Nothing changes. So now everyone in the house is mad at me. I'm being called selfish and dramatic, and my brother is walking around like a wounded puppy. My cousin says I'm being a bit harsh, but honestly, I don't think I'm wrong for wanting basic boundaries. I told him that next time, I'll just start calling the police when someone breaks into my room or uses my card. That didn't go over well. Still, now I'm wondering if maybe I was too harsh for locking him out. He didn't break anything this time, and he didn't have anywhere to go. Maybe it was a petty way to handle it, even though I felt like I had no other options left. So AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me after our parents kicked him out, even though I have the space. This happened a couple of months ago, but the fallout is still going strong, and I'm honestly starting to doubt myself, so I figured I'd post it here. For context, I'm a 32-year-old woman living alone in a 3-bedroom house that I inherited from my grandmother. I work full-time in IT, and while I'm not rolling in money, I'm doing comfortably. I also value my peace and quiet more than almost anything else. I've spent a long time setting up my life the way I want it, and for the most part, I'm pretty content. My younger brother, Adam, is 24. He's always been a bit of a wild card. He dropped out of college after 2 years, has bounced from job to job, and has a tendency to blame everyone else when things go wrong. I wouldn't say we were super close growing up, but we got along fine. Our parents are both alive and reasonably healthy, in their late 50s, and they've always babied him to some degree. I think they expected he'd just figure things out eventually, but he never really did. About 6 months ago, Adam moved back in with our parents after losing another job. He claimed his boss was out to get him, but from what I heard, he was constantly late and missed deadlines. This has been a pattern. My parents let him stay, but I guess it didn't go well. He was staying out late, not contributing to chores, and bringing sketchy people over to the house. Eventually, my mom called me to say they'd given him a 2-week notice to leave. She sounded both guilty and exhausted. So naturally, Adam called me next. He was very calm at first, asking if he could crash with me just for a few weeks while he found a new place. He said he just needed a soft landing and somewhere to get back on his feet. I told him I needed to think about it. Here's the thing, I do have a space. I use one of the extra bedrooms as a home office, and the other is basically a guest room/storage area. So on paper, it makes sense. But I know my brother. A few weeks could easily turn into months. I've seen it happen, and I've worked hard to create a home that feels like mine, quiet, organized, stable. I knew if he moved in, all of that would be gone in a week. I called him back the next day and said no. I told him I wasn't comfortable having a roommate and that I didn't think it would be a good idea for our relationship if he moved in. I tried to be kind but firm. He immediately got angry. He said I was turning my back on family, that I was selfish and privileged, and that I only had what I had because I got the house from our grandmother. That part stung, because I was the one who took care of her during her final year, while Adam didn't visit her once. She left me the house because I was there, not because she liked me more. He said he didn't have anywhere else to go. I reminded him that he had 2 weeks, and maybe he should focus on looking for housing instead of yelling at me. That didn't go over well. Since then, it's been a mess. He ended up couch surfing with friends for a bit, and now he's renting a room from some guy he found on Craigslist, which he complains about constantly. He texts me every few days with passive-aggressive messages like, "Must be nice having a whole house to yourself," or "Hope you're enjoying all that space while your brother sleeps on a futon next to a litter box." Sometimes he just sends one-word texts like "wow" or "unbelievable." My parents know better. My dad has stayed mostly neutral, but my mom is clearly upset with me. She's called me cold and ungrateful, and even hinted that my grandmother would be ashamed of me. That part honestly made me cry. I was the only one who took care of her in the end. I gave up weekends, adjusted my work hours, handled her medical care. Adam didn't even show up to the funeral on time. I've explained my reasoning to my parents multiple times. I've told them I love Adam, but that I don't want to take on the emotional and financial strain of housing someone who's never shown responsibility. They say I should have at least given him a chance. But here's the thing. I've seen what giving him a chance looks like. My parents gave him a chance for 6 months, and it left them drained and desperate. I don't want that for myself. Still, part of me feels like I failed him. Like I've internalized this idea that being family means you do whatever it takes, and maybe I should have sucked it up and helped him for a little while. I know he's struggling, and I know I could have made things easier for him. But I also know that my peace matters too. My friends are mostly on my side. They've met Adam. They've seen how he operates. One of them said bluntly, letting him move in would be like lighting your sanity on fire and hoping he doesn't notice. That made me laugh, but also made me feel like maybe I'm being too harsh. After all, he's my brother. I had the means to help and chose not to. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me when he had nowhere else to go, even though I had the space. AITA for not letting my friend stay at my house after she borrowed my clothes without asking. So this all started about a month ago when my friend, Sarah, not her real name, moved back into town after living in another state for a few years. We were close in high school, but we fell out of touch a bit over the years. She reached out to me a few months ago, and we quickly reconnected. She told me how excited she was to be back and how she'd love to catch up. I'm a pretty laid-back person, and I was genuinely excited to have her back in town. I had a guest room available and told her she could stay with me for a while until she got settled in. She said she'd be looking for her own place, but that it might take a couple of weeks to find something. I had no problem with this at all. I was happy to help out a friend, especially one I hadn't seen in years. The first couple of weeks were great. We spent a lot of time together, reminiscing about high school, hanging out, and even doing some shopping and other fun activities. I didn't mind that she was living with me. It was fun catching up, and it felt like old times. But then things started to get a little weird. One morning, I woke up and noticed that a few of my clothes were missing. I had a set of brand new, expensive leggings and a couple of my favorite sweaters that I always kept neatly folded in a drawer. I thought maybe I'd misplaced them, so I went through the house looking for them. I eventually found them in Sarah's room, tossed into her laundry basket. I didn't think much of it at first. I figured maybe she had borrowed them, but I wasn't happy that she didn't ask first. I decided to let it slide, but when I went into her room again a few days later, I saw more of my clothes, including a few of my nicer tops, in her room, again, in her laundry basket. At this point, I was getting a little frustrated. I have no issue with lending my clothes to close friends, but this felt different. She hadn't asked once. I decided to bring it up to her that evening. "Hey, Sarah, I noticed you've been taking my clothes without asking," I said. "I don't mind lending you things, but I would really appreciate it if you'd ask first." She seemed genuinely surprised and a little defensive. "What are you talking about?" "I didn't take anything," she said. "I just borrow your stuff when you're not home, but it's not a big deal, right?" I was taken aback by her response. "It's a big deal. I don't just leave my clothes lying around for anyone to take. If you want to borrow something, just ask. I don't mind lending things out, but it's about respect." She rolled her eyes and said, Okay, I get it. I won't borrow your stuff anymore." But the thing is, she didn't stop. I kept finding more of my clothes in her room. It was starting to feel like she was just taking whatever she wanted without a second thought. The final straw came last week. I had this expensive jacket I saved up for months to buy. It's my favorite piece of clothing, and I always make sure to keep in good condition. When I couldn't find it one morning, I went into Sarah's room and found it casually hanging on the back of her door. She wasn't home at the time, so I grabbed it and left a note saying, "Please ask before taking my clothes." When she came home, she was furious. She accused me of being overdramatic and said I was making a big deal out of nothing. I told her that I had asked her multiple times to respect my stuff, and this was the last straw. She tried to apologize, but the damage was done. I was done with her taking my things without asking. I told her that, given how disrespectful she was being about it, I no longer felt comfortable with her staying at my house. I offered to help her find a place to stay or give her resources for short-term rentals, but I told her she needed to find somewhere else to live by the end of the month. She was shocked and angry. She said I was being petty and that I should just let it go, but I stood firm. Now, a few days later, I'm feeling conflicted. I know it was just clothes, and it's not like she's doing anything malicious, but the lack of respect for my things really hurt me. I've been trying to rationalize whether I overreacted. Should I have let her stay a little longer, maybe given her more time? Or was I right to ask her to leave because of how she handled the situation? I've also been thinking about the broader issue here. She seems to think I'm being unreasonable, but I don't want to just sweep my feelings under the rug. We're supposed to be friends, and I expect a certain level of respect. But maybe I'm being too harsh. AITA for asking her to leave after this. AITA for refusing to help my sister financially after she spent all her money on a vacation. So, to give some background, I, 29M, am the oldest of 3 siblings. My sister, Olivia, 26F, is the middle child, and my brother, Jake, 24M, is the youngest. I've always been the responsible one in the family, and my parents often look to me for advice and financial help, especially when things get tight for them. I don't mind helping out in small ways when necessary, but I've never been one to give away large sums of money, and I've always made it clear that I can't afford to be anyone's financial safety net. Olivia has always been a little bit reckless with money. She's had a couple of jobs here and there, but she's always been in and out of work, and her lifestyle has been pretty extravagant considering her income. She's the type to spend her paycheck on designer clothes, go out to expensive restaurants, and take vacations to fancy resorts, despite not having a stable financial situation. I've talked to her a few times about budgeting and managing her finances, but she always brushes me off, saying I don't understand her lifestyle or that I'm just too cheap. Anyway, recently, Olivia took a week-long vacation to Europe with some friends. I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, she works hard, and if she can afford it, good for her. But about 2 weeks ago, she called me in a panic. She told me that she had run out of money and couldn't pay her rent for the month. She mentioned that she had already asked our parents for help, but they were struggling with their own bills and couldn't send her any money. She asked me if I could help her out with the rent, which was about $1,500 plus a bit more for utilities. I was shocked. Olivia had just gotten back from a luxurious vacation and had spent a ton of money on shopping and dining while she was there. It seemed like she had nothing saved up, and now she was in a financial crisis. When I asked her how she ended up in this situation, she admitted that she had been living in the moment and spending without thinking about the future. She had even maxed out her credit card on the trip, and now she was facing a mountain of debt. She apologized for not asking for help earlier, but said she really didn't want to burden anyone. I told her that I didn't have that kind of money to spare right now. I've been saving for a down payment on a house and have a few financial goals I'm working toward, so I simply couldn't afford to give her that amount of money. I also explained that I didn't think it was responsible for her to keep making these impulsive financial decisions and then expect others to bail her out. She got upset, saying I was being selfish and that she wasn't asking for much, just a little help to get through the month. She accused me of being too judgmental and acting like I was better than her, which really stung. Olivia said that I had more than enough money to help, but I was just too cold-hearted to do it. She also pointed out that I'd helped other people in the past, including friends who were in similar situations, and now I was refusing to help her. The argument escalated when I told her that if she had been more responsible with her money, she wouldn't be in this situation in the first place. I also reminded her that I had offered advice and guidance on budgeting and saving multiple times, but she had always brushed it off. I told her that it wasn't my responsibility to clean up her mess and that she needed to start taking accountability for her financial choices. Olivia hung up on me, and since then, she's been ignoring my calls and texts. Our relationship has been really tense, and my parents are caught in the middle. They've said they understand why I didn't help her, but they also think I should have done something to prevent her from getting into this mess. They think I should have offered her a smaller amount, just enough to get her through the month so she could avoid eviction. I've been feeling guilty ever since. I know Olivia is in a tough spot, but I can't help but feel like she needs to learn her lesson. I don't want to enable her reckless behavior, and I'm afraid that if I give her money now, she'll just continue making poor financial decisions in the future. But at the same time, I feel bad that she's struggling, and I worry that I might have come off as too harsh. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister financially after she spent all her money on a vacation? Should I have been more understanding and given her the money? Or did I make the right call by standing firm? Edit. To clarify, I didn't have any ill intentions in the conversation with her. I truly care about my sister, and I know this situation is difficult. But I don't think it's healthy to bail someone out every time they mess up, especially when they've been given advice and opportunities to improve their financial habits. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for taking my ex-best friend to court over a $3,000 loan. I, 28F, have been friends with Claire, 29F, for over 10 years. We met in high school, became inseparable in college, and always had each other's backs. We've been through a lot together, and for the most part, our friendship has been a constant in my life. That was until recently. About a year ago, Claire came to me in a bit of a crisis. She had lost her job due to company downsizing and was struggling to find a new one. She told me that her bills were stacking up, and she didn't want to lose her apartment. Claire had a few savings, but they were quickly running out, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could last without a steady income. After talking with her for a bit, I agreed to help her out with a loan to cover her rent and living expenses for the next few months. I trusted Claire completely, and I felt that helping her would be the right thing to do. We agreed that I would loan her $3,000, and she would pay me back within 6 months. I even wrote up a simple agreement outlining the terms of repayment, including the due date, and we both signed it. It wasn't formal, but it felt like a fair arrangement between friends. I didn't think I'd ever have to worry about not getting paid back. After all, Claire and I have been friends for over a decade. We trusted each other. Fast forward to 6 months later. I reached out to Claire to remind her about the loan repayment. I know that money can sometimes be a tricky subject, but I didn't think asking her for what we'd agreed upon would be a big deal. Claire was always very responsible, and I expected that she'd have no problem paying me back. When I messaged her, she replied with a brief, "Hey, I'm sorry, things have been tight. Can I pay you back next month?" I was understanding at first, knowing that life can be unpredictable. But a month went by, and I didn't hear anything. I messaged her again, and this time, she didn't respond for a full week. I was getting frustrated, but still tried to be patient. When she finally replied, it was with a text that left me stunned. "I'm really sorry. I'm just not in a place to pay you back right now. I've been going through a lot, and I'm not sure when I'll be able to pay you back. I hope you understand." I was angry, but tried to keep it together. I told her that I had trusted her, and we had a written agreement. I reminded her of the loan and how I needed the money back as soon as possible. She responded by saying that she was doing her best and that she didn't need the pressure. At that point, I felt like she wasn't taking me seriously, so I asked her for a timeline. I said I needed to know when she could pay at least part of the loan. Claire's response was a bit defensive. She said that things were still tough and that she didn't think I would make such a big deal out of it. I was hurt and confused. The loan wasn't an insignificant amount of money, and we had an agreement. I was starting to feel like I'd been taken advantage of, and I needed to make some tough decisions. Over the next few months, I continued to ask for updates. Claire would occasionally send me small amounts of money, like $100 here and there, but it didn't even begin to cover the interest that had been building up on the loan. I also noticed that she was spending money on things like going out to eat with friends, buying new clothes, and going on small vacations. Meanwhile, she hadn't paid me back in full, nor had she even stuck to the repayment schedule we'd agreed on. Eventually, after almost a year of not getting the loan fully paid back, I decided to take legal action. I didn't want to go this route, but I was tired of being ignored and put off. I tried reaching out to Claire one last time, explaining that if she didn't pay me back or at least come up with a solid repayment plan, I would have no choice but to take her to court. She didn't respond. I filed a small claims case against Claire for the $3,000 plus the interest. I didn't want to escalate things to this level, but at this point, I felt like I had no other option. I've tried everything to resolve this without going to court, but Claire had shown no real intent to pay me back. I also spoke to a few of our mutual friends before taking action, and they were split. Some said I was in the right, and others thought I should have just let it go and written off the money because of our history. When Claire found out I had filed the claim, she was furious. She called me crying, saying that I was ruining our friendship over money. She accused me of not being a true friend and of being heartless. She said that the $3,000 was too much and that I should have understood how hard things were for her. She also claimed that I knew she didn't have the money and shouldn't have lent it to her in the first place. This really upset me because it felt like she was trying to turn the tables and make me feel guilty for wanting to be repaid. I reminded her that we had an agreement, and I had been patient for almost a year, but she didn't seem to care. She ended the conversation by saying, "I guess this is the end of our friendship." The court date was set, and I went through with the case. In the end, I won the judgment, and Claire was ordered to pay me back. However, since she had been so evasive, I'm still not sure if I'll ever see the full amount. It's been awkward since, and I haven't heard from her much. Our mutual friends have mostly stayed out of it, though I can tell some are disappointed in both of us. Some think I should have just let it go, and others think I was right to take legal action. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I honestly don't know if I made the right choice. I'm still hurt by how she handled everything, but I can't help but feel like I did what I needed to do. I also worry that I may have ruined a decade-long friendship over something that could have been worked out differently. So, AITA for taking my ex-best friend to court over a loan. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay at my house after she insulted my boyfriend. I, 28F, have always had a pretty good relationship with my older sister, 32F, although we've definitely had our share of disagreements growing up. I've always been the more easygoing one, while she could be a little intense. For the most part, we get along now, though, especially because I've moved away to another city and we don't see each other all that often. I'll visit when I can, and we stay in touch regularly over the phone. A few weeks ago, she called me out of the blue and asked if she could stay at my place for a few days. She's in between apartments and was looking for somewhere to crash while she figured things out. I agreed, of course. My boyfriend, 29M, who I've been with for about 2 years now, and I have a nice 2-bedroom apartment, so it wouldn't be an issue. We have a guest room, and I figured it would be nice to catch up and help her out. Now, here's where things took a turn. My boyfriend and I were planning to have a quiet weekend at home, just the two of us. We hadn't had much alone time recently because of work and other commitments, so we were both really looking forward to it. But because my sister needed a place to stay, I told him we have to push our plans back for a few days. He didn't seem thrilled but agreed, understanding that it was family, and we'd just make the most of it. When my sister arrived, things were fine at first. She seemed to be in a good mood, and we spent the evening catching up, talking about work, relationships, and life in general. However, the next morning, my boyfriend and I went out for breakfast, just the two of us, to enjoy some time alone before she woke up. When we returned, she was already up and sitting in the living room, scrolling through her phone. As soon as I walked in, she gave me this strange look. I didn't think much of it, but then she dropped a bombshell. She said, "So I don't get it. Why are you with him?" I was taken aback. I asked, "What do you mean?" She just shrugged and said, "I mean, I've been thinking about it, and he's not really your type, you know? You always talked about wanting someone more ambitious, someone with more drive. He's just kind of, I don't know, laid back, doesn't seem to have much going on. And don't get me started on his fashion sense. I mean, I don't think he owns a single shirt that's not from concert or a band." I was stunned. My boyfriend is an artist. He's not some high-powered businessman, but he's passionate about what he does, works hard, and has a very successful side hustle with his music. His style might not be my sister's cup of tea, but I happen to love it. His laid-back nature is one of the things I adore about him. But hearing her say this so bluntly really caught me off guard. I try to brush it off at first. "Well, he's not exactly everyone's cup of tea, but I think he's great." She scoffed. "Yeah, well, I'm just saying you deserve someone better." I felt my blood start to boil. I couldn't believe she was being so rude about my boyfriend. She had met him a few times before, and he'd always been kind and respectful to her. I was about to say something, but my boyfriend came into the room, and the conversation abruptly shifted. I could tell he noticed the tension, but he didn't say anything. The rest of the day was awkward, to say the least. My sister didn't seem to want to make any effort to hide her judgmental attitude. She made snide remarks about my boyfriend's career, his hobbies, and even his choice of music. It was honestly like she was on a mission to belittle him. And the worst part was, she kept doing it when he was around, acting like I wouldn't notice. My boyfriend, to his credit, kept his cool and didn't react, but I could tell it was getting to him. That evening, we had planned to watch a movie. My boyfriend had picked out a documentary that he was excited to share with me, but my sister immediately shot it down. "That sounds boring," she said. "I'm not watching that." Instead, she suggested we watch some rom-com she'd been dying to see. I agreed because, honestly, at this point, I just wanted to avoid any more drama. But when my boyfriend hesitated and said he wasn't in the mood for a rom-com, she turned to him and said, "Ugh, are you always this difficult? You can't just compromise." I was beyond pissed at this point. My sister wasn't even trying to hide how much she didn't like my boyfriend, and the fact that she was doing it so openly and so frequently made me feel incredibly uncomfortable. I felt like I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, she was my sister, and I didn't want to cause drama. On the other hand, she was disrespecting my partner, and I wasn't about to let that slide. That night, I pulled her aside after the movie. I told her that I was really upset with how she'd been acting toward my boyfriend and that she needed to be more respectful. She responded with, "I don't see why you're so upset. I'm just being honest. I don't like him, and I don't think he's good enough for you. You could do better." I was furious. I told her that she didn't have to like him, but she had to be respectful if she was going to stay at my house. I told her that if she couldn't do that, she needed to leave. She was shocked and argued that I was overreacting, but I stood firm. I said she could either apologize and start treating him better, or she could leave. To my surprise, she packed up her stuff and left the next morning. She didn't even try to work things out. She called me a few hours later and told me that I was choosing him over family, and that I was being unreasonable. I tried to explain my side, but she hung up on me. Since then, we've barely spoken. I've tried to reach out, but she's ignored me, and I honestly don't know what to do. I don't think I overreacted, but I'm starting to wonder if I was too harsh. I'm not willing to put up with disrespect toward my boyfriend, but at the same time, I don't want to lose my sister over this. AITA for asking my sister to leave after she insulted my boyfriend? AITA for kicking out my best friend after she tried to take my dog? So, This all started a few weeks ago when my best friend of 10 years, Ava, came over to my apartment to hang out. We've always been super close, and I've considered her practically family. I've always been there for her through tough times, whether that was emotional support during breakups or helping her move multiple times. She's someone I trust deeply. But recently, things have been changing, and now I'm questioning whether I overreacted in a way that made me the asshole. I have a dog named Max. He's a 3-year-old golden retriever, and I've had him since he was a puppy. I've always been pretty protective of Max, because, to be honest, he's been my main companion for the past couple of years. I've gone through some rough stuff in my life, my parents' divorce, a breakup, and a major career shift, and Max has been my constant. He's been there when I was crying on the couch. He's always there when I need a little comfort, and I genuinely feel like he's my family. Ava has always liked Max, but I've never gotten the vibe that she was obsessed with him. She'd play with him when she came over, but she never seemed like she wanted to take him home or anything. At least, that's what I thought. One evening, Ava came over to hang out, and we were just catching up, talking about our lives, work, and all the usual stuff. Max was doing his usual thing, laying on the couch next to me, occasionally looking up at Ava for pets. At some point during our conversation, Ava mentioned that she was going through a rough patch in her life. She's been struggling with her job and some personal issues. I could tell she was upset, so I tried to comfort her, offering my usual, "Hey, if you need a break, just let me know" type of support. Out of nowhere, she looked at Max and said something like, I'm really thinking about getting a dog to help me with this stress. Max is so well-behaved and calming. He could really help me through all of this." I thought she was just making small talk, so I laughed and said something like, "Yeah, Max is a pretty chilled dog, but I think he's already got the perfect job with me." I didn't think much of it until she kept going. She told me that she had been looking into getting a dog, but she wasn't sure what breed would be best for her. She said that Max was the perfect fit and that she was considering adopting a dog similar to him. At first, I didn't think anything of it, but then she started talking about how it would be great to have a dog like him because she needed something to help her with her anxiety and depression. Again, I get it. It's really tough to go through life's challenges, and I wanted to be supportive, but I felt like she was low-key hinting that she wanted my dog, Max. When I asked her about this more directly, she was like, "I know it sounds crazy, but I really feel like Max would be great for me. You've had him for so long, and he's just such a calm, loving dog. I think he'd be perfect to help me out with everything I'm going through." That's when things started feeling really off. She was basically saying that Max was the ideal dog for her and that he could help with her mental health. And then, to make matters worse, she started talking about how much more she could offer him: a bigger house with a yard and more freedom to play. It was like she was trying to sell me on the idea that I was holding Max back and that he could have a better life with her. I had to stop her right there and tell her that I wasn't okay with the idea of her taking Max away. She laughed it off, saying I was being dramatic and that she would never actually steal him, but she kept pushing the idea of how great it would be for Max to live with her. By this point, I was starting to get seriously uncomfortable. I explained that I didn't think it was a good idea for her to keep bringing up taking my dog. I even said, "Ava, I understand you're going through a rough time, but Max is my dog. He's my family, and I'm not going to give him up for anyone, not even you." At this point, Ava seemed to get upset, and she started to argue with me. She told me I was being selfish for not seeing how great it would be for her to have Max. She said that I was keeping him from a better life, and that made me feel like I was being a bad person. She said I was being unreasonable and that it was just a suggestion, that I was blowing out of proportion. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't help feeling a little betrayed. I asked her if she even realized how disrespectful it was to suggest that she could just take my dog because she thought it would be better for him. She said I was being dramatic and that I should get over it. Honestly, I've never seen her like this before. I've always thought of her as the kind of person who would respect my boundaries, but in this case, she wasn't. After a few more minutes of arguing, I told her that maybe it was best if she left. I told her that I wasn't going to let her make me feel guilty for wanting to keep Max. She tried to argue a bit more, but I was done. I asked her to leave, and she did. I haven't heard from her since that night. Now I'm feeling really conflicted. I've been thinking about everything, and I feel like maybe I overreacted by kicking her out. I mean, I do get that she's going through a tough time, and I want to be there for her, but I also feel like she crossed a line by suggesting she could take my dog. I've been a bit upset because it feels like she was trying to take something I hold so dear from me. So, AITA for kicking her out? I honestly feel like I did the right thing, but now I'm questioning if I'm being too harsh. Would love some perspective. AITA for ending my friendship with someone because they kept taking credit for my work? Okay, so 28M, have been working at a mid-level tech company for the past few years. I'm not at the top of the food chain, but I have my own responsibilities, and I've managed to gain the respect of my peers and bosses because of my work ethic and creativity. Lately, though, I've been dealing with a situation that's making me question if I'm overreacting or if I'm completely justified in my actions. So here's the background. I've been working alongside a colleague. Let's call him Brian, 30M. Brian started at the company a year after me, and we quickly became friendly. He's outgoing, fun to talk to, and on paper, he's super competent. At first, everything seemed fine. We would occasionally collaborate on projects, bouncing ideas off of each other, and I thought we made a great team. Over time, though, things started to shift. I began to notice that a lot of the projects we worked on together were being presented as Brian's ideas. I'm talking full-blown presentations where all of the creative solutions, the brainstorming, and the work were pretty much entirely mine, but somehow Brian would step in front of the team and take credit for everything. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just enthusiastic about the project or didn't realize how much I contributed. But the more it happened, the more I began to feel frustrated. The first major incident was during a big project we had to deliver to a client. We were working on a proposal for a new feature, and I had spent hours researching, planning, and coming up with an innovative design. Brian was aware of everything I was doing, but he wasn't doing much in terms of coming up with solutions or doing the heavy lifting. A few days before the presentation, Brian sent me an email saying that he wanted to take the lead on presenting the feature, which I didn't mind at first. I figured that it would be a good opportunity for him to showcase his skills. When the day of the presentation came, however, Brian stood in front of the client and proceeded to present the entire project as if it had been his brainchild. He mentioned a few collaborative ideas here and there, but the vast majority of the content came across like he had created it all by himself. The thing is, it didn't even get mentioned. There was no acknowledgement of my work, and when I tried to chime in with some clarifying points, he would interrupt me or quickly move on to the next topic. It was incredibly uncomfortable, especially because I could tell that the client was impressed with the work and I felt completely erased. After the meeting, I spoke to Brian in private. I tried to be calm and professional, but I couldn't hide my frustration. I told him that I felt like he had taken too much credit for my work, and that it wasn't the first time it had happened. He laughed it off and said something like, "Oh, come on, you're being dramatic. We both worked on this together, didn't we?" He then told me to stop overthinking things and that I shouldn't worry about small stuff like credit because we were a team. But here's the thing, it wasn't small stuff. This wasn't a one-off incident. Over the next several months, the pattern continued. Anytime we worked together, Brian would either present my ideas as his own, or at best, he would downplay my role and make it seem like I was just a sidekick. I started documenting everything in case I needed evidence, but I didn't want to escalate things unless I absolutely had to. Finally, things came to a head during a major product launch. I had been responsible for developing a feature that would play a big role in the success of the product. It was a complex, innovative idea that had a lot of moving parts. I was leading the development, working late nights, and collaborating with other departments to make sure everything went smoothly. As usual, Brian didn't contribute much to the development, but he was quick to show up when it was time for the final presentation. During the launch meeting, Brian once again took center stage and presented my work as his own. He even started taking credit for some of the extra work I had done to make sure the feature was bug-free. When I finally spoke up, he shot me a look and told me to calm down and let him handle it. It was at that moment that I realized this wasn't just about credit. It was about respect. He wasn't just taking credit for my work. He was actively diminishing my contributions in front of everyone. I ended up going to my manager afterward and explaining the situation. I presented my documentation, the timeline of events, and everything I had done to support the project. My manager seemed sympathetic but didn't immediately take any action. He told me that he would look into it, but I could tell he wasn't convinced I had a real issue. So I took a few days to think things over, and that's when I made the decision to distance myself from Brian. I started avoiding collaborations with him, and I stopped offering help on any projects he was leading. I didn't confront him directly about my decision, but I made it clear that I didn't want to work with him anymore. I even started declining lunch invites and started spending more time with other colleagues who respected my contributions. Brian has since reached out a couple of times to ask why I've been so distant, but I've kept things vague and just said I've been busy. Now, this has created an awkward situation at work. Some of our colleagues have noticed the tension and have started asking me what happened. I've been honest with a few of them, but I haven't gone into too much detail. Brian has started telling people that I'm being sensitive and unreasonable, and that I'm making a big deal out of nothing. He's even told a few people that I've been jealous of his leadership skills. It's frustrating, but I'm standing my ground. I know it's probably making things difficult for me in terms of office dynamics, but I just couldn't keep working with someone who didn't respect me. It's been weighing on me, though. I'm starting to feel like maybe I overreacted. Maybe I should have talked to him more directly, or maybe I should have just let it slide. But the thing is, I don't think I should have to keep letting someone take credit for my hard work. So, AITA for ending my friendship with Brian because of the constant credit stealing, or am I being too sensitive about it? AITA for refusing to lend my brother money to help with his get-rich-quick scheme. So I, 28M, have a brother, Jake, 25M, who has always been pretty impulsive. I love him, but he's made some questionable decisions in the past. A few months ago, he started telling me about a new business venture he was getting into. At first, I thought it was just a phase, something he'd eventually forget about. But as time went on, it became clear that he was serious about it. He called me one evening and told me he had come across an incredible opportunity to make a lot of money really fast. He's always been into things like flipping items online or dabbling in cryptocurrency. But this time it was something called high-risk investments in some kind of startup companies that were promising massive returns. Now, I'm no expert in finance, but I have a decent understanding of how things like stocks and investments work, and this just didn't sound right. I told him I was skeptical, but he insisted it was a surefire thing. He explained that in order to make the big money, he needed to invest a significant amount up front. I asked him how much, and he said he needed about $15,000. I was floored. I couldn't believe he was asking for that much money. I don't have a huge savings account or anything, but I'm responsible with my money. I've been saving up for a down payment on a house, and I don't want to risk that. I told him I wasn't comfortable lending him that kind of money, especially for something that sounded so risky. I also reminded him that he didn't really have a track record of successful ventures in the past. Every time he's tried something like this, it's ended badly. I wasn't trying to be harsh. I just didn't want to see him get hurt financially. He was not happy with my response. He called me selfish and accused me of not supporting him. I told him that if he really believed in the opportunity, he should be able to find investors who are more comfortable taking risks. He said I was being unreasonable and that I should be helping him out because we're family. The next day, he came over to talk to me in person. He was upset and told me he had already gotten some money from our parents, but it wasn't enough. He wanted me to help him cover the difference. I told him that I understood why our parents might have helped him, but I couldn't follow their lead. I reminded him again that this wasn't a decision I was going to make lightly. I had my own financial goals, and I couldn't afford to take such a big risk on something that didn't seem like a guaranteed success. Things got worse from there. Jake kept texting me, calling me, and even showing up at my apartment unannounced, asking me to reconsider. He said I was ruining his chances and that if I really cared about him, I'd help him out. I started feeling really guilty, but at the same time, I knew I was doing the right thing for myself. Now, here's where things get complicated. After I refused, Jake went on social media and posted a long rant about how his family wasn't supportive of his dreams. He made a whole post about how I and our parents were holding him back and how I was the only one who had the means to help him. The post went viral among some of our family and friends, and now people are starting to reach out to me, asking why I'm being so cold-hearted. Some of them are saying I should just lend him the money, that it's not a huge amount for me, and that family should come first. Others are more neutral, saying they understand my hesitation, but think I should have been more supportive. Either way, I've gotten a lot of backlash, and it's been really stressful. I feel like I'm stuck in the middle of a situation where I can't win. If I lend him the money, I'm afraid he'll blow it, and if I don't, I'm the bad guy. My parents are also divided. My mom is on my side, saying that I've worked hard for my money and should be able to make my own choices. My dad, on the other hand, thinks I'm being too hard on Jake and says that family should help each other in times of need. But even he admitted he's not sure about the investment itself. I've been really conflicted, but I'm standing my ground. I just don't want to lose all my savings on a risk I don't believe in, and I don't want to enable Jake's reckless behavior. But now I'm starting to question if I'm being too harsh, especially since I know he's probably going to make a bad decision regardless of my involvement. AITA for refusing to lend him the money? I get that he's frustrated, but I also think it's my right to protect myself financially, right? Or am I just being selfish? Thanks for reading. AITA for telling my friend that I don't want to be her emotional support animal anymore. 28F, have a friend, let's call her Sarah, 27F, who has been going through some tough times lately. We've known each other since college, and while we've had our ups and downs, we've always supported each other through difficult situations. Recently, though, things have taken a turn for the worse, and I'm not sure if I can keep being there for her in the way she expects. Sarah has always had some emotional baggage. She had a difficult childhood, and her parents were never really supportive of her. As a result, she's developed some attachment issues and has often leaned heavily on her friends, particularly me, for emotional support. I've been there for her through breakups, family issues, and even job stress, but over the past year, it's felt like she's been expecting more and more from me. I'm not sure when exactly it started, but she started treating me like her emotional support animal, and I'm starting to feel exhausted. The tipping point happened about a month ago. Sarah had just gone through another bad breakup. This one was particularly messy and was spiraling. She called me at least 5 times a day, and I could barely get through a workday without her texting me nonstop. She would cry to me about how terrible her ex was, how lonely she felt, and how she had no one else to turn to. I try to be supportive, of course, but I have my own life, my own responsibilities, and I was starting to feel like I was carrying all of her emotional weight on my shoulders. At first, I tried to be patient. I told myself it was just a rough patch, and she'd bounce back like she always did. But the more she leaned on me, the more I started to resent it. There were days when I felt like I couldn't even go to the grocery store without getting a text from her asking if I was free to talk. I stopped hanging out with my other friends because I felt guilty for not being there for Sarah. I started avoiding her calls, and when I did pick up, I was barely able to muster any empathy because I felt emotionally drained. Last week, she texted me in the middle of a workday, saying she was having a meltdown and needed to talk. I had a meeting I couldn't reschedule, so I told her I couldn't talk right then, but would check in later. She didn't take that well at all. She bombarded me with text messages about how I was abandoning her and how she couldn't trust me anymore because I wasn't there for her when she needed me most. She said I was being selfish and that I didn't care about her. I've never felt more frustrated in my life. After that, I decided I needed to have a conversation with her. So, I met up with her yesterday for coffee, and we talked about everything. I told her that I loved her as a friend, but I couldn't continue being her emotional support crutch. I explained that while I wanted to help her, I also had my own mental health to manage, and I needed space to focus on my own well-being. I told her that I couldn't be available 24/7, and I needed her to respect my boundaries. She didn't take it well. She started crying and telling me that I was being cruel. She accused me of abandoning her when she needed me most, and said that no one else would ever be as supportive as I had been. I tried to explain that it wasn't about abandoning her, but that I couldn't keep sacrificing my own needs for hers. I told her that I wanted to help her, but I couldn't carry her emotional load all the time. After the conversation, things have been awkward between us. She hasn't reached out much, but when she does, it's usually just to send a passive-aggressive text about how good friends are supposed to always be there for each other. I feel like I'm in a really tough spot. On one hand, I want to be there for Sarah, but on the other hand, I'm feeling suffocated and resentful. I'm not sure if I did the right thing by setting boundaries with her, but I also don't want to lose myself in the process of helping her. I've talked to a couple of other friends about this, and while they understand my position, they also think I should give Sarah more grace because of everything she's going through. but I can't help but feel like I'm being manipulated and that I'm the one sacrificing too much. My question is, AITA for telling my friend that I can't be her emotional support animal anymore? Edit. I've seen a few comments asking if Sarah has a therapist. Yes, she does. She's been seeing one for about a year now, and I've encouraged her to continue that. However, she often tells me that her therapist doesn't understand her as well as I do, which is why she turns to me so much. I know she has a lot of unresolved trauma, but it's been hard for me to help when I feel like I'm constantly being pulled into her emotional chaos. Edit 2. Some people have suggested I might be enabling her behavior. I think I've been doing that to an extent, and that's part of why I'm feeling so drained. I've realized that I haven't been enforcing boundaries as much as I should have, and I've allowed her to rely on me too much. I'm working on being more firm with my boundaries now, but it's definitely hard. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his wife stay with me after they constantly criticize my parenting. So I, 30F, have a younger brother, Aaron, 27M, and he's married to his wife, Lisa, 28F. Aaron and Lisa don't have any kids yet, but they're always very vocal about their opinions on how I raise my 4-year-old son, Max. I'll admit that I'm not perfect, but I feel like I'm doing the best I can, and I try to be an involved and loving parent. The issue started a couple of years ago when I invited Aaron and Lisa to stay with me for a week during a holiday. They lived about 3 hours away, and I thought it would be nice to have them stay over and spend some time together. Max was still a toddler at that point, and things were a little chaotic, but I thought they'd understand. Almost immediately, Aaron and Lisa started criticizing how I parented Max. They didn't like that I didn't always have a strict schedule for him, and they thought I was too lenient with him when it came to things like screen time or letting him stay up a little later than normal on special occasions. They made comments like, if he keeps getting this much screen time, he's going to be addicted to it when he's older, or you're letting him run the show. You really need to start setting boundaries. It was constant, and it felt like they were judging every little thing I did. At first, I brushed it off, but as the week went on, I became more and more annoyed. It didn't help that they didn't offer to help with anything like cleaning up after meals or even just playing with Max so I could get a break. They mostly just sat around on their phones and would comment on how disorganized my parenting style was. Eventually, I snapped. One night, after a particularly long day where I had tried to juggle work, parenting, and hosting them, I told them that they were welcome to go stay at a hotel if they were going to keep criticizing my parenting. Aaron got defensive and accused me of being overly sensitive, and Lisa backed him up, saying that they were just trying to help me be a better parent. I ended up asking them to leave earlier than planned, which was uncomfortable, to say the least. It felt like a huge blow to our relationship, and Aaron hasn't really spoken to me since. I tried to explain that I wasn't upset about them offering advice, but about the way they constantly criticized me, without offering any help or even acknowledging how hard parenting can be. I told him that if they wanted to be helpful, they could pitch in with things like babysitting or doing a chore now and then, but instead, they just acted like my choices were wrong. The problem is that my parents, who are pretty old-fashioned and conservative, have been siding with Aaron and Lisa. They think I was being too harsh and that I need to listen to their advice because they're childless and know what's best. My mom even implied that I might be too proud to accept help from family. This has really frustrated me because I feel like I'm doing my best and that I shouldn't have to explain my parenting to anyone, especially not my brother and his wife. Recently, Aaron and Lisa mentioned that they were planning to visit again for another holiday. This time, they asked if they could stay with me, and I immediately said no. I explained that the last time they stayed with me, the experience was stressful, and I wasn't willing to repeat it. Aaron got upset and said that I was being dramatic and that it was just a few comments. But to me, it felt like much more than that. It wasn't just a few comments. It was a consistent pattern of undermining my parenting and making me feel inadequate in my own home. I said that if they wanted to visit, they could get a hotel or stay with our parents, but I wasn't comfortable hosting them anymore. My parents are furious with me and are telling me that I should just get over it and let Aaron and Lisa stay with me. They've said that I'm making a big deal out of nothing and that family should always stick together. I understand that they want peace and that they want us to have a good relationship, But I honestly feel like I have a right to set boundaries with my own family, especially when it comes to how they treat me and my son. Now I'm feeling really torn because I'm in the middle of this family conflict. My brother thinks I'm being unreasonable, my parents think I'm being stubborn, and I just feel like I'm stuck trying to protect my own peace and my relationship with Max. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his wife stay with me again after all the criticism I've received? Should I just let it go and try to make amends? Or do I have a right to stand my ground? I just want to make sure I'm not being the one who's overreacting. AITA for refusing to let my brother move in with me after he wrecked my car? So, some background. I'm a 27-year-old woman, and my brother, Mark, is 24. We didn't always get along growing up, but over the past few years, we've built a better relationship. We've become close, and I thought things were good between us. I've been living in my own place for the past 2 years after moving out for a job in a city a few hours away from my hometown. I have a solid, stable job, and I'm doing well financially. Mark, on the other hand, has had a tough time finding his footing. He dropped out of college 2 years ago and has been hopping between low-paying jobs ever since. I've been sympathetic to his situation, but it's frustrating because he's always made excuses for why he can't get things together. He's had a few opportunities to improve his life, but hasn't really taken them seriously. I try to help him by giving him advice, but he's not really receptive to it. About a month ago, Mark called me out of the blue, and he was clearly upset. He told me that he had been living with our parents, but things had gotten really tense at home. They had argued about him not paying rent, not helping around the house, and not doing anything to improve his situation. He said that he had nowhere else to go and needed a place to stay for a while until he could get back on his feet. At first, I was hesitant. I've had some issues with him in the past. He could be irresponsible and entitled at times, and I wasn't sure if it was a good idea. But I also felt guilty and didn't want to leave him stranded, especially since our parents were getting sick of him. So, I agreed to let him crash at my place for a couple of months. I set some boundaries right from the start. I told him that he would have to contribute to the household in some way, either by helping with chores or paying a small amount of rent to cover utilities. I also asked that he treat my home with respect. The first week went by without incident. He helped out a little with cleaning, and I thought maybe he was finally starting to get his act together. But then things started to go downhill. He didn't help with anything after that initial week. He'd leave dishes in the sink, leave lights on, and leave his clothes all over the place. Every time I asked him to pitch in, he'd get defensive, saying he was doing his best and that I was being too demanding. The real issue came about 2 weeks ago when he borrowed my car. He didn't have a car of his own, and I had let him use mine a few times before. This time, though, he ended up getting into a car accident. It wasn't a major crash, but it was enough to cause significant damage to the front bumper and the driver's side door. When he called me to tell me about the accident, he sounded casual, almost like it wasn't a big deal. He kept saying things like, "It's no biggie, I'll get it fixed," and "I'll pay you back once I have the money." I was absolutely furious. First off, the car was my only means of transportation. I depend on it for work and everything else. Second, I'd let him borrow it, trusting that he would be responsible with it. But this was the final straw. The damage to my car was going to cost a lot to fix, and I couldn't afford to deal with that expense, especially since I was already struggling with other financial commitments. I tried to remain calm when I spoke to him about it. I told him that I was really upset and that I needed him to take responsibility for what happened. He apologized, but then it felt like he was just brushing it off. He didn't take ownership of the situation in any meaningful way, and he kept repeating that he would pay me back eventually. But at this point, I wasn't sure if I could trust him to follow through with that. His track record wasn't great when it came to keeping promises. After a few days of trying to figure out how to handle the situation, I decided that I couldn't continue letting him stay with me. I spoke to him about it directly. I told him that I was willing to help him in the future, but I couldn't let him live with me anymore. I explained that his lack of responsibility had crossed a line, and I just couldn't have that kind of behavior in my home. I also mentioned that I needed to focus on my own responsibilities and couldn't afford to constantly worry about him and his actions. Mark got extremely upset when I told him he needed to leave. He said I was being too harsh and unsupportive. He claimed I was kicking him out when he needed me the most, and that he was already going through enough. He said I was the only family member who could offer him a place to stay and that I was being selfish. He even went as far as to accuse me of holding the accident over his head and using it as an excuse to get rid of him. I felt terrible about kicking him out, but I also felt like I had no other choice. I spent the next couple of days trying to decide if I'd made the right decision, and the guilt really started to eat at me. I kept thinking maybe I should have been more patient or given him a bit more time to get his life together. But at the same time, I couldn't ignore the fact that he had been disrespectful, careless with my property, and unwilling to make any real effort to improve his situation. The situation has been tense since then. Mark hasn't spoken to me much, and when he does, it's usually in a cold, short manner. I haven't heard from our parents much either, and I'm not sure if they're upset with me for kicking him out. I'm starting to question if I did the right thing, but I honestly don't know what else I could have done. So, Reddit, AITA for kicking my brother out after he wrecked my car and I didn't take responsibility? Should I have been more lenient, or was I justified in setting boundaries? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.